Hello, Dr. Anne. Are you there?
Yeah, good morning, Dr. Priyanka.
Yeah, good morning. Actually, I think you can try sharing. I think they have made you co-host because the live streaming has already started.
Okay, I
Just,
can do
uh,
it.
just,
Just a minute, I would need to leave and come back. I'll be back.
are you able to share?
Hello, I'm back. Just give me a minute. Uh, Hello, I think because I had to log in and log out again. The host has been disabled. Can you make me the co-host again?
Okay, just a minute. Let me check.
Yeah, yeah. One second. Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can see the screen. Um,
Ma'am, am I audible to you?
yes, you are audible. Yes.
A very good morning to one and all present here. Welcome to the fifth session of the seminar. Today's resource person is Dr. Anne-Marie George, who is working as an assistant professor in VIT University. She has received her PhD in Film Studies and Visual Culture from the English and Foreign Languages University, Hyderabad. Her doctoral thesis focused on production and stardom in Malayalam cinema. She did her post-graduation in English from the English and Foreign Languages University, Hyderabad, and her undergraduation from St. Xavier's College, Ahmedabad. She has presented papers at various national and international seminars. She has published papers in reputed journals and has been invited to deliver lectures on film studies. She has qualified the UTC NET and AP SET. We welcome you, ma'am. Over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. First and foremost, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this platform to talk about films. So today's talk that I'll be giving is focusing on exploring cinema through an eco-critical lens. And this particular presentation today would be a very basic introduction to how you would look at films through a eco-critical perspective. How would you analyze a film as an eco-critical text? So also, I have made this presentation in a way that I would finish off in about 30 minutes, and would also want to show you a clip which would last for about 10 minutes, and then we'll have a discussion. Also, I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, perfect. So, first and foremost, we'll be talking about why eco-criticism and films. So, in recent years, environmental crisis has taken the center stage on the global agenda, prompting critical conversations about humanity's impact on the natural world. Within the realm of the arts and humanities, eco-criticism has emerged as a multidisciplinary field of study which examines the relationship between literature, film, and the environment. Eco-critical film analysis is a subfield of eco-criticism, and it offers a structured and rigorous framework for scrutinizing how cinema both reflects and shapes our understanding of the ecological issues facing our planet. Eco-critical film analysis recognizes that films are not only cultural products, but also powerful conveyors of societal values, attitudes, and beliefs about the environment. So, by exploring this, employing these approaches, scholars or cinephiles can dissect the complex interplay between cinema, nature, and society. And eco-critical film analysis does not only highlight environmental themes explicitly portrayed on screen, but at times also dwells into the underlying socio-critical subtext that may be present in a wide range of films. Before we move on to what eco cinema is, we'll also be looking at the term uh, or understanding this term called eco cinema. The term eco cinema was coined by Scott McDonald in his article Towards an Eco Cinema to describe films that provide, and I quote, something like a garden, an Edenic respite from conventional consumerism within the machine of modern life, as modern life is embodied by the apparatus of media. McDonald uses the term to describe a specific category of films that engage with ecological and environmental themes in a meaningful way. Eco-cinema has since become a recognized field of study within film and environmental studies, and it has grown in importance as environmental issues have gained more prominence in public discourse. Researchers and scholars in the field of film studies, environmental studies, and eco-criticism have continued to explore the diverse ways in which cinema addresses and represents environmental concerns. So for this presentation, not be just looking at eco cinema as such, also how do we look at other texts or other films where we could identify eco-critical elements in. We can also look at certain factors that, like the rise of eco-criticism in film, can be traced back to certain factors. The first and foremost would be the rise of environmental awareness, because as environmental issues have gained prominence in public discourse, filmmakers have recognized the significance of these themes. Environmental documentaries and fictional narratives that explore ecological concerns have become more prevalent. And we see a rise of these narratives in the past 20 years. It's not that it's not been there before, but there is a substantial rise in these narratives over the past couple of years. Eco-criticism always has been an interdisciplinary field, and it has drawn from diverse areas such as ecology, biology, philosophy, and sociology. And this interdisciplinary approach naturally found a home in film studies as well, which again frequently intersects with various other disciplines. Also, the emergence of eco cinema, as we've discussed, has been instrumental in the growth of eco criticism in films. Filmmakers and documentarians often use their work as a medium for environmental advocacy, promoting ecological awareness and activism. Sorry. Uh, yeah. So now we'll be looking at some key principles of eco-criticism in films. So first and foremost thing is we have to remember that eco-criticism film often operates as on the same principles that traditional eco-criticism would be adapted to literature. It could be adapted to the medium of cinema as well. The first and foremost principle would be the representation of nature. Eco-criticism in film usually examines how nature and environment are represented in movies, This analysis goes beyond the mere backdrop and considers the ways in which nature becomes a character, a symbol, or a central element of the narrative. The second principle would be the environmental ethics. A central concern is the environment ethical dimensions of how humans interact with the environment, both in the narrative and in the production process. Filmmakers often need to address ethical dilemmas such as environmental impact when shooting on location and using certain technologies. The third principle would be anthropocentrism. Much like in literature, ecocriticism in films critiques anthropocentrism. It can be reflected in many ways in which the films prioritize human experiences and interests over those of the natural world. These films also would explore the consequences of such a perspective and whether films challenge or perpetuate it could be an area of study in India. The other principle would be ecological awareness. So this principle underscores the role of cinema in fostering ecological awareness among viewers. Films can educate and inspire audiences to better understand ecological systems and interconnectedness, promoting a sense of responsibility to the environment. The fifth principle would be the study of place and space. Just like in literature, the significance of place and space in film is very important. Ecocritics in films examine how different environments shape narratives and characters. They often explore the concept of ecotone in films, which refer to transitional zones between ecosystems. The sixth principle would be environmental activism. So, some filmmakers and scholars embrace ecocriticism as a means of engaging in environmental activism. They use their films to advocate for environmental causes, provoke discussions, and to raise awareness about pressing issues, including climate change, deforestation, and species conservation. And the final principle would be the interdisciplinary approach. So, ecocriticism in film employs an interdisciplinary approach drawing upon scientific knowledge, ethics, and other fields to provide a holistic understanding of environmental themes in movies. Next, I'm going to be looking at a few eco-critical film genres. These are not an exhaustive list, and these are also not watertight compartments. Some of these films that I discussed here could also follow into or fall into different categories at the same time as well. The first genre that we would be discussing would be eco documentaries. So, eco documentaries are non fictional films that aim to educate and raise awareness about environmental issues. They often feature interviews with experts, field footage, and a strong focus on presenting presenting factual information. So, giving few examples here of this, there's this film called Blackfish. This is a documentary, and this is available on YouTube as well. This particular documentary called Blackfish traces the captivity of a particular orca called Tilku, who is involved in the death of three people. This documentary traces his capture in the wild. It also has a lot of interviews with his trainers, other experts in the field, and it argues that wild caught orcas or killer whales experience extreme stress when captured as juveniles, and spending a lifetime in aquariums, being forced to perform and breed, led to aggression towards other orcas and humans. So this film also can be a little disturbing for people because it also features footages of attacks on trainers by Tilikum and other captive orcas, as well as it has interviews of witnesses featured in this uh, particular documentary. The second genre that we'll be discussing is environmental horror. Environmental horror films, they use the natural world as a source of fear and threat. They often depict nature as a menacing force, such as a natural disaster, killer animals, or ecological revenge. So, pretty sure many of us are familiar with the films that I've talked about here as examples, which would be Hitchcock's Birds, where you have the birds turn against humans. You have Jaws, which was directed by Spielberg, and The Happening, which was directed by N. Night Shyamalan. So it is also interesting to note when we have Jaws, they used a mechanical shark. This is a film that was made in 1975, and many times the mechanical shark would misfunction. So what they decided to do is instead of showing the mechanical shark over and over again, they began suggesting the presence of the shark, and it just the mere suggestion of the presence of the shark gave a way for making it more ominous. And there is always a imminent fear in the audience about when the shark would appear next, and which also gives it an Hitchcockian feel to it. The Happening is another film where you have uh, people suddenly committing mass suicides. And one of the characters in the film talks about how the trees are producing a neurotoxin to get rid of humans. So you have natural environment or nature in a way turning against humans to create a sense of horror. The third genre that we'll be looking at is eco-science fiction. So eco-science fiction usually explores ecological and environmental themes within the context of speculative and futuristic scenarios. They often dwell into the consequences of environmental degradation or the impact of human technology on nature. So, Wall-E could be a film that many of you are familiar with. It's a Pixar film. Similarly, there is Snowpiercer, which was directed by Bong Joon-ho, who is also the director of Parasite. And this film is based on a French graphic novel, which explores the environmental issues and human survival in a dystopian climate change world. The film is set in a post apocalyptic world where the failed climate engineering experiment has caused a new ice age. And this environmental catastrophe is the central backdrop of the story. It highlights the consequences of unchecked climate change and environmental degradation. The fourth genre that we'll be exploring is eco-fantasy. Eco-fantasy films incorporate ecological elements into fantastical and imaginative settings. They often involve magical creatures, mystical lands, or allegorical stories with ecological undertones. So, the example that I'll be talking about here would be Princess Mononoke, which is a Studio Ghibli film, is often seen as a quintessential eco-critical animated film. It explores the conflict between industrialization and nature as a young prince and a warrior princess confront the impacts of human activities on a mystical forest. Um, the fifth genre that we'll be looking at would be rural and agricultural films. So these films focus on rural life, agriculture, and the connection between humans and the land. They often depict the challenges faced by rural communities and the impact of industrialization on films, on farming. So one film that we can also talk about here would be a film called Kadvi Hawa. This is a 2017 Hindi film which sheds light on the consequences of climate change on rural farming communities. It depicts the challenges faced by farmers due to erratic weather patterns and dwindling of water resources. And if we have time after the presentation, I would also like to show you the trailer of this particular film so that you get an understanding of how this film talks about the rural and agriculture films. Uh, the next genre that we'll be looking at is eco-comedy. Eco-comedies use humor to address environmental issues and sustainability. They often employ satire, irony, and absurdity to engage audiences while conveying important environmental messages. So, example, we have a film called Pani, which was released in 1985. It tells the story of a village dealing with water scarcity in a humorous and entertaining way. It uses satire to address the issue of water conservation. We also have the 2009 film Weldon Upper, which I assume many of us would be more familiar with. This is directed by Shyam Benegal, and this film follows the misadventures of a man who's trying to dig a well in his village. This film also combines humor with a strong message about the importance of water resources. The next genre would be the wildlife and conservation films. So these films center on the protection of wildlife and the efforts to conserve endangered species and their habitats. These films often celebrate the beauty and the diversity of the natural world. So here we have uh, examples would be something like March of the Penguins, which is a documentary, or a film like Born Free, which was based on the true story of a couple who adopted orphan lioness and later released her into the wild. And this film emphasizes the importance of coexistence between humans and wildlife and challenges the notion of capturing or keeping wild animals as pets. The film Born Free also advocates for the ethical treatment of animals and wildlife conservation. It raises questions about the responsibility of humans in preserving natural habitats and protecting endangered species. So the reason I spoke more about Born Free here because Born Free is not a documentary; it's a film which is based on a true incident. The next genre that we'll be looking at are post-apocalyptic or dystopian films. So these films depict a world ravaged by environmental catastrophe, exploring the aftermath of ecological collapse and the struggle for survival. So here again, we would have example of films like Mad Max, Fury Road. Even the film that we talked about earlier, Snowpiercer, could also be part of this particular genre. The ninth genre that we'll be looking at will be ocean and water themed films. So these films revolve around the world's oceans, marine life, and water-related issues. They often highlight the beauty and fragility of underwater ecosystems. Again, we have examples of films like Ponyo or What Finding Nemo. Ponyo again is a Studio Ghibli film which explores the enchanting world beneath the ocean. It tells us the story of a young fish that dreams of becoming a human and environmental consequences of an action. Finding Nemo can also be seen as an eco-critical film because it talks about a lot of ecological and environmental themes, including the beauty of marine ecosystems, the impact of human actions on marine life, the importance of conservation, ethical fishing practices, and the rehabilitation release of captive animals. The final genre that we'll be looking at here would be the native and indigenous cinema. So these films often focus on the relationship between indigenous cultures and the environment. They explore traditional ecological knowledge and the importance of preserving indigenous lands and practices. So the example that I will talk about is here is Whale Rider. Whale Rider was a film, it's a New Zealand film which was released in 2002. It talks about the deep connection between the Maori people and the natural world, specifically the whales. So the Maori believed that their ancestor Paithia rode on the back of a whale to reach New Zealand, and this legend plays a central role in the narrative of the film. It also highlights the spiritual and ecological significance of whales and the sea in the Maori culture. It showcases the indigenous knowledge and the practices of the Maori people, particularly the understanding of the natural environment and marine life. The film emphasizes the importance of passing down this traditional ecological knowledge to the younger generation as a means of environmental stewardship. So, these eco-critical film genres usually reflect on the diverse ways in which filmmakers engage with environmental themes, from raising awareness and advocating for sustainability to offering cautionary tales about the consequences of environmental negligence. So also they give us an opportunity to reflect on our relationship with the natural world and the pressing ecological challenges of our time. Now that we've discussed the various eco-critical genres within films, We will move on to the next part of the presentation, that is, how do we identify environmental themes and motives in films? So this can also be done through looking at different aspects of the films, such as plot and narrative, characters, the symbolisms and motives used, the cinematography and aesthetics of how the film is made, the dialogues and symbols, and sound and music. So identifying environmental themes, when you're looking at it, is important because this gives us a framework as to how do we study films as a eco-critical text. The first way to be approaching it would be to study the plot and narrative of the film. So when you're looking at plot and narrative, we could have we could look for narratives where nature is more than just a backdrop. It could be a driving force in the plot, influencing characters' actions, conflicts, and the outcomes of the narrative. We could also identify conflicts related to the environment. This could involve battles over land, resource exploitation, pollution, conservation efforts, or the consequences of environmental degradation. We could also note or look out for films that present ecological crisis, post-apocalyptic settings, dystopian futures, which are caused by environmental issues. These narratives often convey a dire warning about the consequences of human actions. The other way of also looking at films would be to examine the character's journey related to the environment. So, do the characters undergo transformation in their understanding of nature or their roles in the environmental preservation? The next aspect that we can also study when we are looking at a film text would be the characters. So, we could identify characters who are the advocates of environmental causes or characters who exploit or harm the environment. And these characters would often symbolize different attitudes of humans towards nature. We could also analyze characters' relationship with the environment. Some of the characters may have deep connections to nature, while others may be disconnected or exploitative of nature. Finally, we could also study the character arcs. So, some scholars would also pay attention to how a character's attitude and action evolves throughout the film. So some of the characters may start off as environmental antagonists, but undergo a redemption or enlightenment as the film progresses. The other thing to also study would be the symbolism and motifs. So we could look for recurring natural symbols such as animals, plants, or specific landscapes that often carry deeper ecological meaning. We could also look for the use of biomimicry, where the elements of the natural world serve as an inspiration for human designs and technology. We could also look at or try to identify motives of nature's resilience and regenerative power, and especially this motive of resilience and regeneration often symbolize hope and renewal in the face of environmental challenges. The next aspect that we can also look at would be the cinematography and aesthetics. Uh, we could analyze the visual composition of the film, pay attention to the camera angles, framing, and the use of light. Cinematography can convey different relationship with the environment. We could also look at visual contrasts between natural and human-made environment. These contrasts may be used to emphasize the tension between human and nature. We could also look at the color palette because the color palette used in the film could give us clues as to how we could look at or what is the filmmaker trying to say. So the natural tones may invoke a sense of harmony with the environment, while cold industrial colors could symbolize this detachment from nature. Uh, We could also look at the dialogues and the language that are used. So we could pay attention to the characters' dialogues. We could listen to the use of language related to the environment. So you can see if there is a discussion about conservation, climate change, or nature's beauty and power in the dialogues. We could also see if the characters are using metaphors or similes that relate to the environment, revealing in the perspective of nature. Or we could look for any reoccurring phrases or slogans that promote a critique of the environmental causes. Finally, we could also look at the sound and music of the film. So, soundscapes would be looking at the sounds used in the film. Natural sounds such as bird songs, flowing water can evoke a sense of connection to the environment, whereas industrial sounds may symbolize environmental degradation. We could also look at the musical scores, that is the soundtrack that is added. So those could be also used to reinforce environmental themes, creating emotional connection with natural world. And by examining these aspects of a film or these elements in a film, scholars or film viewers can gain a deeper understanding of the environmental themes and motives that are woven into the narrative. It also allows us for a more comprehensive interpretation of a film's ecological message and the film's contribution to shaping environmental consciousness. Uh, to the final part of the presentation, which is discuss the challenges and critiques that would come with the eco-criticism in films. So the first and foremost challenge or a critique of eco-criticism is we would often follow into the trap of oversimplifying complexities of environmental issues and just reducing them to binary oppositions of good and bad when we are doing eco-criticism. At times, we also, or critics of eco-criticism would also warn against this concept of greenwashing in films. It's where the industry may seem to promote an environmentally responsible image without making substantial changes to its practices. Because even the filmmaking practice itself or the production of a film itself would harm the environment in a huge way. The next challenge that we could also face would be that while some films explore environmental themes, a substantial number of films still do not, which would leave a gap in the cinematic representation of ecological concerns. Finally, you would have eco-criticism in films, which would need which would need to account for the cultural and contextual variations of how nature and the environment are understood and valued in different societies. Different societies, different cultures will have a different way of understanding or how they approach nature. So that at times does not get acknowledged in or does not get much space in when you're talking about it. I've also included a few texts which could serve as an introduction into the field of eco-criticism or something that could also come for further reading. Thank you. I would also want to, this is putting the screen up for a minute. I'd also want to share a video, a 10-minute video. I think I have kind of finished it in time. So I would also want to share a video and then we'll come back and discuss that video and then we'll go on to the discussion. Just give me a minute. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, we can see the screen.
Yeah. So this is a film called Baraka. It's released in 1992. We just watch few minutes of it. I'll also jump through the videos so that because we can't watch the entire film here, we'll just watch some parts of it and then we move on to the English.
Dr. Anne's sound is not coming.
No, can you hear it now?
No, actually, you have to share the sound when you are sharing the film.
Okay,
There is
just a
there is an
second.
option, I think.
I'll just do that again. Can you hear now? This is
Yes,
a
yes.
Dr. Priyanka, do I have another about 2.5 minutes to show another trailer?
Okay, it's 11:42. I think you can.
Yeah, just so this is the film called Kadvi Hawa that was mentioning in the
एक
presentation.
बच्चे के हाथ पे जब मैंने खाना का
I'm
पूरा
sorry
थाली
about
रखा
advertisement.
तो वो बहुत बहुत
समझौते में दावा किया गया है कि अगर धरती के तापमान पर ब्रेक नहीं लगा तो तबाही आ जाएगी। सबको पता है कि क्लाइमेट चेंज दुनिया के सामने एक बड़ा खतरा है।
सर्दी में तापमान बढ़ने लगा है।
खड़ी फसल को नुकसान हुआ। हजारों किसानों के लिए खेती से ज्यादा आसान है मौत को गले लगाना। नेशनल क्राइम रिकॉर्ड
कोई फंदा लटक के मर रहे हो, कोई जहर खा के मर रहे हो। अब इन बिहार में सिर्फ उन्हीं की चीखें गूंजती हैं। कहाँ के हो?
ओडिशा का हूँ।
स्वर्ग है बातों, हर तरफ पानी पानी, हवा की बड़ी कृपा है तुम सबों।
हाँ, कुछ ज्यादा ही है।
यहाँ से गुजर रहा था तब मैंने देखा ये जगह बिल्कुल सूखा हुआ था और अब पूरा इलाका जो है जलमग्न हो चुका है। सबसे बड़ी
हमारे क्लास में एक लड़का कह रहा हो कि साल में दो ही मौसम होवे, गर्मी और सर्दी।
बरसात को कहाँ गो?
मास्टर बरसात को साल में बस 2-4 दिन ही पड़ते।
सही कही उसने।
हमारे बुक में तो 4 मौसम लिखे हैं।
पहले होते
तो अब काहे नहीं?
साला भिखारी समझाए क्या? पूरा 2000 रुपए चाहिए, नहीं तो कोर्ट आना पड़ेगा कल।
लला, जब हमारे यहाँ बच्चा जन्मता है ना, तो हाथ में तकदीर के जगह कर्जे की रकम लिख के लाते हैं।
हाँ, क्या करें, सबका अपना अपना मजबूरी है।
काम पूरा होने के बाद जेल मिलो, बोलो लेना तो ले आओ, नहीं तो जाओ।
बहुत डर लगा था कि रोग कहीं हमारे मोड़ा को भी ना खा जाए।
कौन सा रोग?
वही हवा।
अरे चाचा, आपके लिए नहीं तो मेरा परिवार के लिए कर दो चाचा। मेरा घर नहीं है, गांव नहीं है, सब समुद्र निकल गया है। उसको ढूंढते ढूंढते मेरा बाप समुद्र के अंदर चला गया। चाचा
So the first clip that I showed was from this film called Baraka, and it's a non-narrative documentary. So there's no story, there's no narration. You just have images, and because of that, this particular film becomes more of an impact. And I'm sorry I couldn't show you the entire film, and I had to rush through certain parts of the clips that I showed. But you would slowly see there is a narration. When you're looking at the film itself, there are certain parts of the film, especially the second half that we've seen, where you have the Brazilian rainforest and the other images of the forest, where you hear the sounds of the tree falling and the blast. So which that's not an added sound to it. And the other places where you have the music itself, so the tone or the tempo of the music increases as the pace increases. So it's also talking about a lot of things. So it also, if you watch this film is also available on YouTube. So if you watch the film, you would see the connection of different cultures with nature. You would see how there is a change in across different cultures with respect to time. We could also see how environmental destruction has caused a lot of issues. And as I was telling you, this is a non-narrative, there's no narrative. And because the narrator has kind of pulled out from it, nature kind of becomes, takes the center stage. And that gives it also a greater impact. And we can also see it that this film, in a way, with it juxtaposing a lot of these environmental destruction with the natural beauty of nature, it's kind of trying to call us or making a call for environmental responsibility and preservation of environment. So thank you for your time, and please feel free to ask any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Ann. The floor is open for questions, comments, or any thoughts you want to share. Okay, there is no more question, no question in the chat box also. Yeah, I think there is
Uh,
one comment, I guess.
so why ecos?
Yes,
Yeah, I can read the comment. Yeah, why
please,
eco cinemas in India are not quite popular, unlike Western eco cinemas? Uh, I think in India this is a genre that is slowly gaining importance. Uh, we have films like, I think later we had a Malayalam film called 2018, which is released recently, and it's also one of India's Oscar entries this time, which is a retelling or this which explores the 2018 Kerala floods. One reason could also be that we are slowly getting into filmmakers. Again, this is not a market as such, which people would like to explore. There have always been films or make filmmakers who talk about eco-critical elements. Girish Kasarwalli is one director who uses a lot of these concerns in his films. So you have his film called Deepa, which again talks about a family that is being displaced from their land, the land which has an ancestral temple. When a dam is being built, so that their ancestral temple, their ways of worship get submerged in water, and how this particular family is trying to hold on to this particular land till the end.
thank you, Dr. Ann. And I think when I was, listening to today's presentation, one film actually came to my mind that is very recent film, The Elephant Whisperers.
Huh.
So if you could little bit reflect on that and in which genre it is coming, I think it's wildlife also because it talks about the Mudumalai Tiger Reserve.
Yeah,
And
it could come under documentary. It could also come under wildlife film. Uh, and it's also talking about the need of conservation and how we as so this film is not without problems because there have already been a lot of talk about how the filmmakers themselves have exploited uh, the two people, the elephant trainers, and they were not given the kind of respect they deserved. So there are a lot of these questions that could come in when we are talking about the films. This is what I was telling you about when you're talking about this. This is not a very black and white area. Many times, filmmakers also what you call about greenwashing. That would also happen when you're talking about making films.
thank you, Dr. Ann. I think there is a request from the audience to share your email ID.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Any more questions, comments, or thoughts you would like to share? Please feel free. Could you please, Dr. Ann, could you please talk about a little bit animated movies where, eco-criticism or this kind of, ecological consciousness have come up? I think Happy Feet could be another movie, right?
It is. It could be, yeah. For some reason, I'm typing in my email ID. I can't. So just give me a minute. I'll just share the first screen, which has my email ID, and then I'll continue with the talk. Yeah, Happy Feet could also be part of this genre. A lot of animes talk about Ice Age, Happy Feet. A lot of Studio Ghibli films, they all talk about environmental concerns. So that is what I was telling you. when you're talking about eco-criticism in films, there are many ways in which we can identify elements of eco-criticism, because nature in a way would play an important role. So it could either be with the presence of nature, or we could also look at the absence of nature, or what you would call the natural world uh, in a film. So that the absence of that could also be an area of study.
Okay, thank you.
So my email ID is here. Sorry.
Any more questions, comments from the audience? We still have some minutes. I think you can make it full screen, Dr. Ann. Yeah. I was also thinking about music. Have you explored that? Like, how music's also, like, there are certain, I think, music, singles or albums which could come under also eco-criticism. I think there is Michael Jackson's one song could be, I think the art song, maybe, I'm not sure.
Again, this is not something that I have personally looked at in great detail, but that is a huge area that is to be explored as well. There are few studies that have been done with music. There are few scholars that I know who are now working with the idea of eco music as such, eco musicology as it is known as. So that's not really my area of expertise, but if there's anyone who's interested in this, I can maybe look for articles and forward them to you.
Okay, that will be very good. Thank you. Just, some thoughts came in my mind. And yeah, we have actually 6 minutes to go. And if we don't have any questions or comments from the audience, then I think we can conclude the session.
Okay. So thank you, everyone. Please feel free to contact me in case you have any feedbacks also. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Priyanka, for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Ann, for accepting our invitation. I also thank our Associate Dean for providing us this opportunity to organize this seminar, this national seminar. I also thank our IT department for their technical support and for making this available on YouTube also. So all the sessions will be available on YouTube channel on VITAP's YouTube channel. And I also thank all the participants for joining this morning session. We do have a session at 3 p.m. So we will be back at 3 p.m. Thank you all. And I'm formally ending the session.
Thank you.